Currently at Universal Studios Florida, the New York section of the park for Halloween Horror Nights has transformed into Sinister's Renaissance Fair titled Torture Fair. But last year at Halloween Horror Nights 32, New York looked a lot different as a recreation of Woodstock 69 was brought to the event but with a twist: vampires. This is a complete retrospective of the 2023 Halloween Horror Nights Scarezone Vamp 69 Summer of Blood. As a warning, this video uses clips from houses and scare zones with flashing lights in the background. The festival the scare zone was based on happened in 1969, but Vamp 69 Summer of Blood would be announced 54 years later on July 28th, 2023, on the Halloween Horror Nights website. But the social media announcement wouldn't happen until August 7th, 2023. This would be the third installment to the Vamp Scarezone series at Halloween Horror Nights, and on Twitter, a Vamp 69 Summer of Blood logo was posted along with a short blurb about the Scarezone that states, quote, "At a 60s music fest in small town New York, you'll jam to popular bands with fellow concertgoers until Dr. Oddfellow unleashes vicious vampires on the audience. They're out for your blood," end quote. Dr. Oddfellow was the 2023 Halloween Horror Nights icon, and his story is long and we won't go over him too much in this video, but just note that he ran multiple circuses and his goal is to master the power of the Dark Zodiac. His role in Vamp 69 Summer of Blood will be explored later on in the video, but one real life connection we can make to this scare zone is the music festival it was inspired by. Woodstock was an iconic music festival held towards the end of the 1960s. Hosted in Bethel, New York, which was a small dairy farm town, this music festival ran from August 15th to August 18th, 1969, and the event would see 500,000 people flock to Bethel to see legendary artists such as Santana, Janis Joplin, The Who, and of course Jimi Hendrix. However, the festival wasn't perfect, as unplanned rain caused the festival grounds to be a muddy mess, and the festival was not prepared to handle the amount of concertgoers who showed up. The recreation of Woodstock at Halloween Horror Nights 32 had a completely different problem though. A group of vampires invaded the music festival. On August 11th, 2023, Universal Orlando published a 15-minute podcast episode sharing the lore about the Vamp 69 Summer of Blood Scare Zone. The story follows a 15-year-old girl whose small New York town is having their first ever music festival. Her favorite band, Cat and the Gemstones, is set to play at the town's music festival and she's freaking out about it with excitement. The music festival is called Music Fest 69, which the generic name is so funny to me. Like, hey man, are you going to the music festival this weekend? No, which one? Music Fest. Oh, the one with music. Yeah, it's supposed to be a big music festival. Anyway, the music festival was held in the town's park, and the protagonist, her friend Sherry, and Sherry's boyfriend Paul decide to go to the festival early, which to their surprise, everyone else had the same idea to show up at the same time. The trio would spend most of their day in the back of the music festival grounds, but would approach the main stage right before the protagonist's favorite band, Cat and the Gemstones, set began. Right as Cat and the Gemstones start to play, the sky changes from a sunny day to a storm, and a horde of vampires appear. I couldn't tell where exactly the horde of vampires came from while listening to the podcast, but let's just assume they appeared behind the stage, as the podcast does mention a curtain. The trio manages to get out of the concert crowd while this occurs, and the vampires are attacking the crowd. They find a school bus, which I assume is the same one we had in the actual scare zone, and start running towards this, but of course Paul has to get attacked by vampires. Sherry and the protagonist attempt to help Paul with no success, unfortunately. Sherry tells the protagonist to go, and she makes it to the bus. In the bus, she shuts it down with a strain of beads and watches Paul pass away. Another vampire attacks Sherry while the protagonist watches from the bus. Every time someone is bit, they turn into a vampire as well, causing everything to multiply. This just all ends randomly and the protagonist survives. She then notices another person who survived. This would end up being Dr. Oddfellow, the person behind all of this, but in the podcast story it's unknown who this person is. The protagonist asks Dr. Oddfellow if he's okay, and rather than saying yes or no, he gives a big grin and then just disappears in thin air. And that's pretty much the lore of Vamp 69 Summer of Blood. The Scare Zone featured characters from 3 different groups. The Bloodslayers, which were a vampire biker group. They were the initial group of vampires who traveled to Music Fest 69 in order to spread havoc on the festival goers. Dr. Oddfellow was a part of this group and persuaded them all to go. The next 2 groups are the actual attendees, but they are split up. First, the hippies, who have not been attacked by vampires, and of course, the vampire hippies, who have been attacked and transformed from hippie to vampire. Vamp 69 Summer of Blood was located in the very fitting New York section of the park. The zone was decorated with the following props: a stage that hosted a mini stage show, a group of motorcycles next to the stage, the psychedelic school bus, which I assume was the same one used in the podcast lore, a 1960s Volkswagen Beetle, a 1960s Volkswagen van, a 1964 Ford Fairlane which took forever to identify, a merch table, a food table, and a plethora of tie-dye bins. The zone also played a loop of 1960s music to set the mood, and let me tell you, nothing felt better than walking through Vamp 69 at the start of an HHN night and immediately hearing Come Together by the Beatles. I have linked the full playlist in the description of this video, but some of the song highlights outside of Come Together are Sugar Sugar by the Archies, Sweet Caroline by Neil Diamond, Down on the Corner by Creedence Clearwater Revival, and so much more. Unlike haunted houses, guests can enter a Scarezone through multiple directions, but for the sake of the video, let's start the walkthrough on the side where Race Through New York starring Jimmy Fallon is located. At the start of the zone to the left is a singular 1960s style motorcycle. This is seen parked next to the Halloween Horror Nights tribute store. More notably, however, is on the right where 3 motorcycles are seen. Pretty crazy stuff here. I'm just kidding. The actual highlight at the front of the zone is the stage, where sometimes a hippie scare actor would scream for help to park guests walking by. After this, they are attacked by the Bloodslayer vampires. On the stage, dummies of musicians are seen with their instruments impaled into their bodies. Moving on through the zone, guests approach the Bloodslayer's car, which was a 1964 Ford Fairlane. As the surrounding vampires create havoc for the hippie festival goers, guests approach the merch stand, where a festival worker turned vampire is running the booth. On the table, a dummy festival attendee has a hookah pipe stabbed into their face. YouTube, this is all fake, I just want to make this clear. Next up is the psychedelic school bus, which is mentioned in the podcast lore. This, by far, is my favorite prop of the zone. Further down, next to the New York arcade, was the Volkswagen buggy and the food booth of Music Fest 69. The festival served questionable food to say the least. At the food booth, the vampire running it pulls a head out from the pot. The zone finishes out with a decked out 1960s Volkswagen bus. I miss walking through Vamp 69 Summer of Blood and being able to walk through Halloween Horror Nights reimagining of Woodstock 69. Regardless if you had the opportunity to walk through the Scarezone, what are your thoughts on it? To be notified for the next Halloween Horror Nights retrospective video, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out anything. YouTube has pre-selected the next best video for you on the screen now. Thank you for watching.